The first lie was so quiet that no one noticed when it settled into the room. It didn't crash like thunder or shatter like glass. It slipped in softly, like dust through an open window, unnoticed, until it began to choke everything. Amara remembered that day with painful clarity. The air had been heavy, not with heat, but with something unspoken. The kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes you wonder if you're imagining things or if something is already breaking. She had just returned home, her son balanced gently against her shoulder, his tiny fingers curled into the fabric of her blouse, as if holding on to the only certainty he knew. His breath was soft, warm, alive, real. Her son. But across the room, her sister did not look at the child the way a loving aunt should. Nala's gaze lingered too long. Her smile came too slow. And when it finally appeared, it didn't reach her eyes. "You're tired," Nala had said, her voice smooth, almost too smooth. "You should rest. I can hold him." Amara hesitated. It was only a second, a flicker, a whisper of doubt she couldn't yet name. But she handed him over anyway, because that's what trust looks like in the beginning. It doesn't ask questions. It obeys. And for a while, everything seemed normal. At least, that's what everyone believed. The neighbors still greeted them the same way. The old women still sat under the mango tree, whispering about everything and nothing. Children still ran barefoot through the dusty paths, their laughter rising into the late afternoon sky. Life didn't change overnight. It never does. It changes slowly, quietly, until one day you wake up and realize you no longer recognize your own life. It began with small things, tiny shifts, subtle, almost invisible. Nala started visiting more often, too often. At first, Amara told herself it was kindness, support, love. After all, hadn't they grown up side by side? Hadn't they shared the same meals, the same secrets, the same dreams whispered under dim lantern light? But there was something different now, something that didn't belong. Nal would arrive early, before the sun had fully risen, before Amara had even finished feeding the baby. "I thought you might need help," she would say. Always that same line, always that same tone. And each time, she would step into the house as if it were already hers. She knew where everything was. She moved with a confidence that unsettled Amara, though she couldn't explain why. And then, there were the moments, the quiet ones, the ones no one else saw. Like the way Nal would hold the baby just a little too tightly, or how she would hum unfamiliar lullabies under her breath, songs Amara had never heard before, songs that didn't belong to their childhood. And then there was the way she spoke, not to Amara, to the child. "My boy," she would whisper softly, her voice almost trembling with something that sounded like longing or possession. Amara heard it once, then twice. Then she started hearing it everywhere. At first, she laughed it off. "You're getting too attached," she teased one afternoon, trying to keep her voice light. Nala smiled. But again, it didn't reach her eyes. "Is that such a bad thing?" she replied. The question lingered, too long, and something inside Amara shifted. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there, the beginning of unease. Still, she said nothing, because what was there to say? That her own sister's love felt wrong? That something in her tone made her skin tighten, her stomach twist? No, that would be ridiculous. wouldn't it? Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, Nala became part of everything. She was there in the mornings, there in the afternoons, there when the baby cried, there when he slept, there when Amara bathed him, there when she fed him, always there, watching, helping, smiling. And the more she was around, the more the lines began to blur. People in the village started to notice. At first, it was harmless. "Oh, your sister is such a blessing," one woman said, adjusting her headscarf as she watched Nala rock the baby gently. "Not everyone has that kind of support." Amara nodded politely. But something about the way the woman looked at Nala and then at the child made her chest tighten. It wasn't just admiration. It was assumption. And assumptions can be dangerous, especially when they're left unchallenged. Another day, another voice. "You're lucky," a man commented casually as he passed by. "He looks just like her." Amara froze, just for a second. "What do you mean?" she asked, forcing a small laugh. The man shrugged. "Your sister," he said simply. "The resemblance is strong." The words hit harder than they should have. Not because they were true, but because they were spoken so easily, so naturally, as if the truth had already been decided, and she had somehow been left out of the conversation. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. Her son lay beside her, his tiny chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. She reached out, placing her hand gently over him, grounding herself in his warmth. He was hers. She knew that. She had carried him, felt every movement, endured every pain, brought him into this world with her own strength. So why? Why did it suddenly feel like she needed to prove it? Across the house, she could hear Nala moving, soft footsteps, a door creaking, then silence. Amara closed her eyes. But the silence didn't bring peace. It brought questions. And questions, once they begin, rarely stop. The next morning, something changed. Not in a way anyone could point to, not in a way that could be explained, but Amara felt it, like the air had shifted, like something invisible had crossed a line. Nala arrived as usual, smiling, calm, composed. But this time, she didn't ask to hold the baby. She simply walked over and picked him up, as if it were her right, as if permission was no longer necessary. Amara watched, her heart beating just a little faster, her fingers curling slightly at her sides. "Nala," she began, her voice careful. But Nala interrupted her. "He needs feeding," she said softly, already turning away. Amara blinked. "What?" Nala didn't stop. "I can take care of it." Something inside Amara snapped. Not loudly, not violently, but definitively. A line drawn in silence. "I'll do it," Amara said, stepping forward. Their eyes met, and for the first time, there was no softness in Nala's gaze. Only something cold, something calculating, something that had been hiding, waiting, growing stronger with every passing day. For a moment, neither of them moved. The baby stirred slightly, caught between them, caught in something he could not understand. And then, slowly, Nala smiled. But this time, it was different. This time, the smile wasn't pretending to be kind. This time, it revealed something else entirely. Something that made Amara's stomach drop. Of course, Nala said quietly, placing the child back into her arms. But as she did, she leaned in slightly, close enough that only Amara could hear what came next. Enjoy it while you can. The words were soft, almost gentle, but they landed like a storm. And in that moment, Amara understood something she had been trying not to see. This wasn't just help. This wasn't just attachment. This was something else. Something deeper. Something dangerous. Because some people don't just want to be part of your life. They want to take it. And the most terrifying part is that they don't always start by taking everything. Sometimes they start by taking just enough that no one notices, until it's too late. After that moment, nothing felt the same. Not the house, not the silence, not even the way her son slept in her arms. Amara started noticing everything. The way Nala arrived without warning. The way she moved through the house like she belonged there. The way she reached for the child before even greeting his mother. It was no longer subtle. It was deliberate. Let me take him, Nala would say. But her hands were already on the baby. Amara began refusing. I've got him. Simple words, calm tone. But each time she said it, something in Nala's eyes hardened. The change didn't go unnoticed. People in the village had started talking. At first it was harmless. Then it wasn't. One afternoon, Amara overheard two women whispering just outside her gate. She's always with the child, one said. I thought he was hers, the other replied. Amara's chest tightened. She stepped outside, forcing a smile, but the women quickly fell silent and walked away. That silence said more than words ever could. That night, Amara confronted her sister. You need to stop, she said quietly. Nala tilted her head. Stop what? This, Amara gestured, acting like he's yours. For a moment, there was nothing. Then Nala smiled, a slow, unsettling smile. Maybe people just see what you refuse to admit, she said. Amara felt the ground shift beneath her. What does that even mean? Nala stepped closer, her voice calm, too calm. Are you sure you can take care of him on your own? The question wasn't concern, it was doubt, and worse, it sounded rehearsed. Amara said nothing, but something inside her locked into place, because this was no longer in her head. This was real. And whatever Nala was planning, she had already started telling the world. The whispers grew louder, not in volume, but in weight. Amara could feel them everywhere. In the market, at the well, in the way people looked at her, then at Nala, then at the child. Something had shifted, and she was no longer in control of the story. One afternoon, it happened. A woman approached Nala, smiling warmly. Your son is beautiful. Amara stood right there. Nala didn't correct her. She simply smiled and said, Thank you. The world went silent. Amara's heart pounded. Why didn't you say anything? She demanded later. Nala shrugged. She assumed. You let her. And what difference does it make? That question hit harder than anything before. What difference? Amara stepped closer, her voice shaking. He is my child. Nala's expression didn't change. Then why does no one see it that way? She replied softly. The words lingered, because deep down, Amara already knew the answer. Someone had been rewriting the truth, and they were almost done. The lie didn't stay outside, it came home. Days later, a knock broke the silence. 2 officials stood at the door. We received a concern, one said, about the child. Amara's chest tightened. What concern? They exchanged a glance. That he may not be in the care of his biological mother. The words felt unreal. Amara looked past them and saw Nal standing at a distance, watching, calm, still, unshaken. You're mistaken, Amara said firmly. He's mine. The officials nodded politely, but their eyes said something else. We'll need to verify that. Verify. As if truth needed permission, as if love needed proof. Behind them, Nal slowly stepped forward. I just want what's best for him, she said softly. Amara turned, disbelief rising. This wasn't concern. This was a move, a calculated step. And suddenly, everything made sense. The whispers, the looks, the doubt. Nal hadn't just been taking space in her life. She had been building a case. And now, she was ready to take everything. The days that followed felt unreal. Amara moved through them like someone watching her own life from a distance. Every moment carried tension. Every silence felt watched. The officials returned. Questions, papers, careful looks that felt more like judgment. Do you have proof? One asked. Proof. Amara's hands trembled slightly. I gave birth to him. But her words weren't enough. Across the room, Nal stood quietly, her expression controlled. I've been the one caring for him, she said gently. Everyone in the community can confirm that. Amara turned sharply. Because you inserted yourself. Nal didn't react. I stepped in where you struggled, she replied softly. The room shifted. It was subtle, but Amara felt it. Doubt. Not just from the officials, from the space itself. That night, Amara sat alone, her son asleep in her arms. Her mind raced. When had this gone so far? When had help turned into replacement? And the most terrifying question of all, how much had Nal already convinced them of? Because this was no longer about whispers. It was becoming something official. Something dangerous. Something that could take her child away, piece by piece. And for the first time, Amara realized she might lose him. Not because she wasn't his mother, but because someone else had told the story better. The hearing came faster than Amara expected. One day it was questions. The next, it was a courtroom. Cold, quiet, unforgiving. Amara sat stiffly, her hands clenched together, her eyes fixed on the small space where her son would soon be brought in. Every breath felt heavy, like the air itself was judging her. Across the room, Nala looked calm, prepared, as if she had been waiting for this moment all along. When her name was called, she stood without hesitation. I've been the one raising him, she said, her voice steady. From the beginning. Amara's chest tightened. That was a lie. but it didn't sound like one. Witnesses were called, neighbors, familiar faces, people Amara had smiled at, trusted. "She's always with the child," one said, nodding toward Nala. "She takes care of him," another added. Each word felt like something being taken, not loudly, but permanently. When it was Amara's turn, she stood slowly. "He is my son," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I gave birth to him. I never left him." But the room didn't react the way she expected. There were no nods, no reassurance, only silence. The kind that makes you question your own truth. The judge glanced down at the papers, then back up. "We will need clear confirmation," he said. Clear confirmation. Amara's heart pounded, because somehow her word was no longer enough. And across the room, Nal watched her. Not with anger, not with fear, but with something far worse. Confidence. As if the outcome was already decided. As if this was just the final step in something she had been building for a long time. Amara felt it then. This wasn't just a fight for truth. It was a fight against a story that had already been believed. And she was running out of time to change it. The final day arrived with a silence that felt heavier than anything before. Amara barely slept the night before. Every thought circled the same fear. What if truth wasn't enough? The courtroom filled slowly. Familiar faces, curious eyes. And then her son was brought in. Small, quiet, unaware of the storm around him. Amara's chest tightened the moment she saw him. Every instinct in her body pulled her forward, but she stayed still. She had to. The judge looked between both women. "One final clarification," he said. "We will observe the child's natural response." The room stilled. Amara's heart began to race. This was it. No more words, no more arguments. Just truth. Or what the child believed to be true. He was placed gently on the floor between them. For a moment, he didn't move. Then slowly, he looked up. His eyes moved first to Nala. She smiled instantly, kneeling slightly, her arms opening. "Come," she said softly. The room held its breath. Amara couldn't move, couldn't speak. Her entire world balanced on this one moment. Then, the child turned. His gaze found Amara. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition. He stood unsteadily and began to walk. One small step, then another. The room felt frozen in time, until finally, he reached her and lifted his arms. "Mommy." The word echoed, soft, clear, undeniable. Amara broke. Tears fell instantly as she dropped to her knees, holding him tightly, as if the world had tried to take him and failed. Across the room, something cracked. For the first time, Nala's composure slipped. Because no story, no lie, no manipulation could rewrite that moment. The word still echoed in the courtroom. "Mommy." It didn't fade. It lingered in the air like a wound that refused to close. Amara held her son tightly, her body trembling as if she was afraid someone might take him again if she let go. Her tears fell quietly now, not from confusion, but from release, from truth finally being seen. But the room was not healed. It was divided. Whispers spread instantly, uneasy and sharp. The judge raised a hand. Order! But even his voice felt less certain than before. Null stood very still, too still. Her eyes were fixed on the child, but her expression wasn't what anyone expected. There was no anger, no denial, only something quieter, something breaking inward. Amara noticed it. For the first time. Null didn't look like someone fighting. She looked like someone who had already lost something she refused to name. I cared for him, Null said suddenly, her voice low. No one responded. She swallowed. I was there when she wasn't strong enough. Amara lifted her head sharply. That's not true. But Null didn't look at her. Not anymore. Her gaze stayed on the child, as if he were the only truth she still recognized. The judge leaned forward slightly. That does not establish maternity. Silence followed, heavy, final. Then the ruling came. Amara was acknowledged as the legal mother. Case closed. But no one moved, not immediately, because victory in that room didn't feel like celebration. It felt like damage. As Amara stood, still holding her son, she glanced at Nulla one last time. And what she saw stayed with her. Not hatred, not revenge, just emptiness. As if Nulla had built something so carefully, only to realize it could never hold the truth inside it. And now, there was nothing left to protect. After the courtroom, nothing returned to normal. People still whispered when Amara walked by, but the words were different now. Not accusations, confusion, doubt that had nowhere left to go. Nulla stopped coming to the house. At first, Amara thought it was relief, but the silence she left behind felt heavier than her presence ever did. One afternoon, Amara saw her near the market, alone, no longer composed, no longer surrounded by certainty, just still. Their eyes met briefly. Nulla didn't smile. She simply nodded once and walked away. No words were exchanged. But something had ended between them that no court could repair. That night, Amara held her son closer than usual. Not out of fear anymore, but awareness. Because she understood now how fragile truth could be when others try long enough to rewrite it, and how easily a life can be questioned, even when it is real. Months passed. The village moved on, as villages always do. New whispers replaced old ones. New stories grew over the forgotten ones. But Amara did not forget. She changed, quietly. Stronger now. Not loud, not angry, just certain. Her son grew, learning the sound of her voice as his anchor. Every time he called her Mommy, it grounded something deeper inside her, something no one could ever take again. Sometimes she thought about Nulla, not with hatred, but with a strange sadness, because she realized something painful. Nulla had not only tried to take a child, she had tried to replace a truth she could not accept about herself. And in the end, truth did not need force. It only needed to be seen once. That was enough. The story doesn't end with victory or defeat. It ends with clarity. And the reminder that love, when real, does not compete. It simply returns home. And to you watching this story, how easily do we accept a version of truth when it is repeated enough times? And how long does it take before we question what we were told to believe? If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this.